Good afternoon and welcome to our weekly media briefing and public health update. Today, leading this event is the county's Chief Administrative Officer, Rich Madalino. And joining him today as well is Montgomery County Police Department Chief, Marcus Jones. Our health officer, Dr. Keisha Davis, is joining us, as well as Mr. Sean O'Donnell, who is Program Administrator, Public Health, Emergency Preparedness, and Response for the Department of Health and Human Services. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Mr. Madalino, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Lorna. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for Chief Jones joining us today. I am doing the press briefing because the county executive is leading a trade mission right now to India, which will go on to Vietnam in a few days. People around our region and around the world might know Montgomery County, Maryland is a global center of excellence in the life sciences. We're clearly home to many critical federal agencies. We're also a growing center of global excellence in hospitality with a number of the world's leading hotel chains headquartered here in Montgomery County. What people may not realize is the growing number of international businesses that have decided to put their U.S. headquarters here in Montgomery County. So we are always abroad, actively looking for international companies that want to find a home in the United States, and we think there's no better place than Montgomery County, Maryland. But of course, this mission is also about helping Montgomery County businesses gain access to new markets around the world. Certainly India, the largest country in the world, a critical market for growth. It's an opportunity for our businesses to get introductions into a variety of places around India, meet partners, and grow their businesses through engagement in India, and then on to Vietnam, an important growing market in Asia. So the county executive has made this a priority in helping to grow the business community and helping our businesses grow, certainly abroad. So that's why he is not with us today, but look for news over the next few days about the successes we are having already in India with MOUs signed with Indian companies. So if people follow the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, or certainly Judy Costello, our special projects manager on economic development issues, she's with the county executive and she's posting lots of information about what's happening in India. So today, we all woke up to a much colder morning in the region because we're getting closer to winter. So there are two critical things we want to remind people of. First, Saturday night, Sunday morning, it's time to fall back. We're going to be changing our clocks and moving back an hour, which is why the Fire and Rescue Service, and I'm sure the police department, want you to change the batteries in your smoke detectors, in your CO2 detectors in your home, so that you're alerted if there is a fire. Now is the perfect time to do it. And so remember, we're going to fall back and change and make sure your smoke detectors and CO2 detectors are working in your houses. And also, starting next Monday, we will begin leaf collection in the county for many parts of the county, down county parts of the county. So everywhere inside the Beltway and to the east of 495, 270, going all the way up to roughly Randolph Road, Belpre Road. All of those neighborhoods have leaf collection done by the county. All those leaves are put into compost. So it's a great way to deal with the leaves. But look for signs around the neighborhood. Check the county website so you understand when your leaves are going to be collected, so that you can have them all raked out and onto up to the curb, not in the street, but adjoining the curb, so that the leaf collectors can come through and get the leaves. So just a quick little reminder about that. So on to Chief Jones and juvenile justice. So many of you may know that on Monday, there was a session of the Public Safety Committee in the County Council that included representatives of our police department, led by Chief Jones, members of the State Department of Juvenile Services executive team, led by their deputy secretary, as well as State's Attorney John McCarthy and several people from the state's attorney's office. because obviously dealing with juvenile crime it is a community-wide effort. It starts with families, and it goes through county government, our partners in the school system, whether it's police, in the court system, and a variety of nonprofit partners, our Department of Health and Human Services. Everyone has a role in making sure we are actually dealing with, in many cases, the root causes of these crimes so that we can prevent them. And we have a variety of ways that we attempt to work with young people so that they do not get into the criminal justice system. So I think Chief Jones is actually, if not the senior member of the Montgomery County Police Department, one of probably the top 10 most senior people in the police department, having spent his whole career here. You know, he has done yeoman's work from his days on the street as a police officer through his ascension all the way to the top job in the police department, being a mentor to youth and understanding the role that the police are supposed to can play in helping steer children away from the criminal justice system. Because I think everyone heard Chief Jones pretty clearly on Monday that his goal, the goal of many of his colleagues, is to make sure young people don't get caught up in the criminal justice system, because that can be a recipe for disaster. The county executive who grew up in this community has long fought for mental health services for young people. He witnessed as a young person many of his friends having an opportunity to get treatment through publicly provided mental health services, a network of clinics that existed here. I don't think he would mind me saying in the 1960s when he was a young person, and how we and communities around the country moved away from that model, and his desire to make sure we move back towards that and making sure young people have lots of different opportunities to seek out services. I think you heard clearly from the state's attorney the desire to find ways to deal with young people outside of the criminal justice system. So we are serious about making progress on this front. It's going to take everyone, the executive branch, the council, a variety of county agencies, the police department, and probably the chief and I have had several conversations over the years, many conversations over the years, that a problem that has occurred with policing across this country is we have too frequently delegated issues to the police, or they've had to step into the vacuum when no one else was doing the work, because the rest of government just found it easy to push it off to the police. And when you create something as a police problem, it often becomes a criminal justice problem. And that's not what he wants, what the executive wants, what probably most people in this community want. And so we can talk a little bit about that. But most importantly, we want to talk about Sergeant Pat Kep. You know that Sergeant Kep was injured in a pretty horrific accident. A horrific accident where in an attempt to stop someone the police were trying to apprehend, he was hit by a out of control driver, and as a result lost both of his legs. It was the on the scene, quick, immediate response of police officers that saved his life. It was their training, their ability to apply tourniquets. It was those police officers on scene who stabilized Sergeant Kep. Then it was fire and rescue service on the scene. Then it was the state police helicopter getting him to shock trauma in Baltimore, the amazing shock trauma system and emergency the response system that the state of Maryland has built up so that he could get very quickly to Baltimore and very quickly get amazing world-class services. And we're fortunate to say Sergeant Kep is still with us and actually recovering with a strong attitude. I've had a chance to visit the sergeant on multiple occasions. The chief has been up there. Governor Moore has been up there. County Executive Elrich has been up there to see Pat and his family. Extraordinarily good spirits for someone who's gone through such a traumatic injury. We are concerned, the county executive, the police chief, the governor, that this young man who has been arrested for the case was still out on the streets when he shouldn't have been. And part of it is because there seems to be inadequate state laws to deal with aggressive driving, truly reckless driving. And so we are already working with the police department, with the state's attorney, and with the Governor Moore's administration to deal with this issue. So we wanted the chief to be here so that he could talk a little bit about how Pat is doing, what the rest of the community should know about his recovery right now, and what we're doing to make sure the situation never happens again. Chief Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Madalino. And so, again, good afternoon to everyone. I do share that Sergeant Pat Kemp is in really a phenomenal spirit in regards to the traumatic incident that he has been through over the past couple of weeks. It is clear that he has lost both legs that were amputated. He knows he has a very long journey in recovery and rehabilitation, but he still has a spirit that he wants to come back and still be a police officer, be a viable police officer. And he is, again, he has been a tremendous asset to our department for the years of his service. We're grateful for that. We are grateful that he is still with us. And again, I echo what the Chief Administrative Officer has noted, Mr. Madalino, in regards to the tremendous assistance that Pat has received, medical assistance, not only on the day of this incident, but the continuing health care that he's receiving is top notch, second to none, and we're very grateful for that. We're very grateful to the community for also their outreach in asking and supporting Pat in many ways, and that's been uplifting for Pat to know that he has that community support. So we are grateful to the county and the residents here, not only in the Montgomery County, but in the state of Maryland and the region for that matter. So we're very grateful for that. So again, I think it is a long road ahead for Pat. He's prepared for that road, and we're prepared to help him in his recovery. So grateful for everyone for that.
Yeah, Pat has done. He's been a remarkable performer for the county.
Absolutely.
With the police department, and truly, when you have a chance to interact with him, for someone who's gone through such a traumatic experience, if there are a few people I think you would feel so confident about. If there's someone who's going to be back up and on the job, it's going to be Pat Kemp.
That's exactly
and we're going to be thrilled to welcome him back to the Montgomery County Police Department, to the whole organization, when he is ready. So Lorna, we're going to stop there and turn it back to you so that we can have any questions for the chief.
Thank you very much, Mr. Madalino and Chief Jones. Members of the media, please raise your hand if you have questions at this time. Oh, there's Darcy Spencer, NBC4. Good afternoon, Darcy. Go ahead, your question.
Good morning. I understand that the chief was going to be talking today about juvenile justice, and I have just a couple questions for the chief. From what I could tell from the data released earlier this week, the juvenile violent crime is up 95% since 2019. Want to make sure I'm reading that correctly. His thoughts about juvenile crime. Also, I just want to get your comments regarding the missing person investigation with a gentleman who was missing for 6 days and was finally found. There was some criticism of the department for not investigating it as vigorously in the early stages, and just kind of get your thoughts now that he's been found, and any changes or any thoughts on that investigation, how it was handled.
So I'll answer the first question in regards to the juvenile justice. Yes, we've seen an uptick in juvenile violent crimes that have been occurring here in the county, crimes such as robbery. We have seen carjackings involving young people, not holistically as that's the only group of people that are committing these types of crimes, but we've seen more and more juveniles become involved in these events, to include stolen cars. We're seeing younger people involved in stolen cars, as well as in some cases gun possession, which is again alarming, I think, on the forefront. So we are working hand in hand, not only with the state's attorney's office, but we really are trying to get messaging out to different facets of our community to talk about preventive measures and getting people engaged in talking to young people about things such as video games and that, these things such as, driving around in stolen cars or carjacked vehicles. This is not a game. This is very serious matters that include, and we want to make sure that that in fact that that people are having these conversations, whether you're a parent, whether you're a mentor, whether you're involved in youth groups. Those are the messagings that we have to do this as a collective effort to try to prevent these types of crimes from occurring in the first place, to make sure young people are redirected. In regards to your second question, Darcy, I would state this, is that we did not handle Rashawn's case any differently. Our detectives were engaged very early in this investigation, as we normally do with missing persons, where there were outreach to other agencies, to include WMATA, involving the bus transportation as well as Ride On. We did extensively step up the investigation, as we do normally when individuals are missing for approximately 2 to 3 days. Then we turn it over to our major crimes division cold case unit, and they do more active investigations. So, at the end of the day, we extensively searched for Rashawn, and then we did that with intensity that involved our search manager, who in fact is the one who actually went above and beyond and found Rashawn in the metro station, in a room that is not widely visited by anyone. So with that being said, we always like to take a look back. We brief all incidents. We'll continue to do that to see if there's something that we could have done better. We're not ashamed to do that. And we'll do that again in this case to see if there's other ways that we can do that in a more timely manner.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Darcy. Kate Ryan, WTOP. Good afternoon, Kate.
Good afternoon. I wanted to follow up on one of Darcy's questions. I know that you have, if it's not a dedicated unit, I know you have an officer, Officer Lori Reyes, who is very involved in searches involving people with autism. And there's an understanding of, what's involved in that. Were any of those people in your department used in the search for Rashawn?
Well, not only that, Officer Reyes actually assisted in this investigation, but not only that, though, we trained all of our officers to identify these types of individuals who have developmental disabilities. This is something that we extensively train for all of our officers. And what's most important here is that the officer who actually found Rashawn is Officer John Green. He is the search manager responsible for finding missing persons of all on all fronts, to include individuals who have Alzheimer's and dementia. And we have an extraordinary record of finding those individuals by the said search manager, who leads many of our officers in the searches of these individuals. So actively, Kate, we had many people that played several roles in this search for Rashawn. And for that matter, I'm very proud of the work that they put together in order to find him.
Gotcha.
We are so thankful that he was found. I mean,
yeah.
Many people were engaged with this in the community. People were concerned, and that's, I think what you saw with the response to the police department is they don't let things go, and it can be so frightening. I know for a family when they're dealing with a missing loved one.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine trying to find a child, especially a child with special needs. But the police never let it die. And we're out there 24/7 looking for this young man. And it was a group of officers who, as you've heard, went above and beyond to actually find Rashawn. And we are so thankful that occurred.
If I can follow up on a different topic, I watched you testify before the Public Safety Committee the other day. You did not mention SROs in particular, but are you, Chief, supportive of bringing them back in their old roles, not just the community engagement officers, but getting them in the schools the way they were under the SRO program in the past? Is that something you want to see restored?
So I've had a conversation with Dr. McKnight. We continue to have that conversation about the significant roles that officers could play in schools. I don't think it's a secret that I have always been in support of those officers who worked in the schools and the great work that I think they've been doing over the years. But I will say again, the school system, the way I view this, they are the customer. We provide the service to them as they so desire us to provide that service. And that's the conversation that Dr. McKnight and I've had on multiple occasions. She understands that. And we'll continue to, again, I think, have the discussion about whether or not the value of having those officers in the schools will benefit Montgomery County Public Schools in so many ways. And we look forward to having that continued discussion.
And then finally on safety, public.
Hey, Kate, can I jump in for a second? As you may know, state law is very clear that it is up to the school system, the superintendent, to make these decisions and to work with the local police department about what the rules are.
Right.
So, you know, we are doing, Chief Jones is doing what the school system is comfortable with. Certainly the county executive has been very clear that he was concerned about the old system, that the police were being dragged into too many in-school disciplinary issues. And that's not the role for the police to be disciplining young people for in-school violations, but not criminal violations. And so we've been trying to find a happy medium, and the county executive has encouraged us to continue to work that way. Chief Jones has been very engaged, as has the entire CEO community engagement program and the school system. And we're looking, I think it's fair to say, every day if for changes that need or could be put in place if they were going to improve the safety situation in our schools.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And then lastly, real quick on the Sergeant Kep's situation. You've lost officers before to drunk drivers, for example. I'm thinking of Officer Noah Liotta. I have talked to the family of the cyclist who was killed on River Road, and often people are shocked to learn that Maryland state law, the penalties in cases like that can amount to a fine and community service. Do you see yourself going before lawmakers in Annapolis to ask for tougher penalties when loss of life and severe injuries like this involve either reckless driving, speeding, drunk driving?
Absolutely, Kate. I think this is vitally important. In fact, I've had a conversation with both the county executive and the governor on this very issue. And I think everyone is along the lines that Maryland really needs to take a harder look at, particularly the way that this individual that we just dealt with Sergeant Kep, his recklessness, which I think is above and beyond and intentional, which is a whole different story. But his record, I think, speaks for itself. That makes the state that we have to look at things differently. So I am going to be definitely before the legislature and try to really push this matter and have really good discussions with the legislators to figure out better ways to for these types of charges to be had and to hold folks accountable on the front end, so we don't have said tragedies in the future in the state of Maryland.
Because the problem isn't with, I think, the laws that will hold him accountable for the injuries he caused to Sergeant Kep.
Right.
I mean, because he is going to be in jail for a very long time, if not the rest of his life, for what happened in the incident with Sergeant Kep. The problem is we didn't have the right laws to keep him from being behind the wheel in the first place. And if we had had some of those enhanced penalties for the reckless driving he was doing before, hopefully he would not have been on the street that night and the injury would never have occurred.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Thank you, Kate. Carney Cohn, Mocha 360. Good afternoon, Carney.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you. Going off, so I have a couple questions, starting with going off the conversation we were just having about KEP. You know, what is the importance of differentiating between like speeding and reckless driving? And from my understanding, is there not a strong enough law in place right now to differentiate between the two? And why is that an important differentiation? Because obviously he had received many tickets in the past for excessive speeding. So what is the differentiation there? What should it be in your opinion?
Well, he had more than just excessive speeding, Courtney, charges. He did really other types of reckless behavior, such as, he would see a police officer at a traffic light and he would deliberately drive through that traffic light in order to get the police officer's attention, to have the officer chase him, to create a larger danger in our community. And then he would drive in excessive speeds that were reckless. And we think in that manner, doing it in a way that is just above and beyond the pale of what we would normally just say someone was speeding inadvertently, right, in a certain zone. He was doing it intentionally. That's a difference, right? And so that is, again, a matter of really looking at his behavior, the types of behavior when we have, for example, sometimes we have these car meetups and we see cars that are literally burning rubber, spinning wheels in the middle of intersections and driving recklessly, that have, in fact, there's been cases that they've actually caused injury to individuals in those intersections as they're observing people drive such as this. These are the things we have to have conversations about, that we don't allow these folks to take over our roadways and to be a danger to our community. That's the focus that we're really centered around.
Okay, got it. And then a question about the juvenile justice topic. Obviously, in the report and in the committee hearing, there was a lot of discussion about increases in crime in recent years, especially among juveniles, with robberies, handgun offenses, carjackings, things like that. Why do you think that these trends are increasing so much now and over the past few years? Is it just because these specific types of crimes are increasing? Is it something to do with, the environment, the system? Like, why are these crimes increasing now? And is there a specific reason for that? Or is this just something you've been seeing for a longer period of time?
No, it's not something we've been seeing for a longer period of time. I'm going to be a self-admitted that I'm not a social scientist, right? And I don't know the root cause of why young people are involved in these types of delinquent acts. There's a lot of people who have, and I could have my own personal opinion, but I don't. The reality is that there's a problem in our society when a 14-year-old is out at 11 o'clock at night stealing cars or carjacking cars. There's a problem in our society when young people are going into stores and actually robbing individuals of their wares. The question that a lot of is, where are the parents? Where's their authority figures that are monitoring where they are and what they're doing? So there's a lot of unanswered questions that I think we as a collective community, it's not just about the police department, what we say. I think there's a lot of people that have a hand in this matter that needs to address this overwhelming problem. And it's not only happening here in Montgomery County. This is something that is happening across the state. It is happening across this country. And it's something that we really have to figure out better ways to really get an understanding and really preventive measures in place to make sure our young people understand this is not the type of behavior that's acceptable in our society.
And the chief has also been quite passionate, and I would argue accurate, in talking about the easy access to guns. I mean, we've never had ghost guns before. The whole idea you could order different pieces of a gun separately to assemble together into a firearm is a new thing that we are all coming to terms with in this country. And the idea that a young person could jump in and gain access to these weapons with simple purchases online is quite frightening. And so, you know, there has been an ongoing effort by, I would say, one political party in this country to make sure that guns were everywhere, and we are seeing some of the implications of that sort of public policy approach, which has put guns into the hands of people who should never have them, aren't eligible to have them, but find a way to get them. So, and you know, I know there's been a lot of talk about the juvenile justice reform actions that have happened in the state. You know, I would just point out that these are issues that communities are wrestling with, whether they've passed laws like Maryland did, or if they've gone the other direction. There has been an uptick, as you heard the chief say, in juvenile crime across the country. And if he or I knew the solution, we maybe wouldn't be in the roles that we were in. We would be different, you know. But that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of things that we need to be attempting. And throwing the book at people, just criminalizing everything, isn't the path that we want to take. People should be held accountable for their actions, and we need to find a way to do that in a way that doesn't put a young person so behind the eight ball that they're unable to succeed as an adult, because that will only have more and more consequences, which is why the chief, and I mentioned before, has talked about mentoring young people to help people get off of the path where he could see individually they were going down a path that was going to lead to a lifetime of difficulty, to how do we get this child on a different path and actually be a successful contributing adult.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Darcy, Spencer, your hand's still up. Do you have follow-up questions regarding these topics, or?
I definitely can. So there have been a bunch of bomb threats in Montgomery County. There was the issue of a later age teen being arrested, I say in quotes, and then the 12-year-old who could not actually face charges, and just dealing with the multitude of these. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but it's a lot, and it's a disruption. And just since we have him, the chief here on camera, I'd like to get some of his thoughts. There's actually some bomb threats going on in Northern Virginia. So yeah, it's not specific to Montgomery County, but I sense some frustration with particularly the 12-year-old, with not really being able to do much with that.
Well, let me just start with the 12-year-old. And again, I want to make sure that I was clear in this, because there are some people who have there's been this misperception about exactly, or misunderstanding about exactly what I meant by what I was saying about my frustration about a 12-year-old. What is not in place is the ability for us in the criminal justice system to be able to divert this young person to an intervention program or a diversion program, which we have been able to do in years past in our system. And I think there was nothing mandated that required this individual to do. Is basically, we wrote a police report, we documented that this individual committed said offense, and now Montgomery County Public Schools, they could actually do some discipline acts because it occurred in the school. But the reality is that's within the school system. There's a lot of other dynamics that happen outside of schools. And that was my overall theme about where we are with the 12-year-old. And I am frustrated along the same line of any bomb threat that's actually been happening, particularly that they're false alarms. And these are really, we're utilizing a lot of resources in order to go to these schools, in order to make sure that there is no said bomb at anywhere in a large high school, as an example, or middle school. And when you do that, not only are you disrupting the school day because you're evacuating. In most cases, we're evacuating the schools. Students are put out, away from the school while we're doing the search. And parents are, again, alarmed. They're fearful, particularly about what's going on in the world today, over in the Middle East, as an example. And that is, again, where young people don't understand that dynamic, the ones who are committing these said offenses. And we've talked to a couple of them, and they clearly don't get it. And so we're working, I've worked with, we continue to work with MCPS in order to put out a message to not only the students, but the parents to really sit down and have these conversations, because this is real talk, right? This is where, again, this is when these threats come through. We are taking every single one of them seriously, from start to finish, to include the investigation of who is actually calling in these threats. And we will, to the best of our ability, when we can, we are going to charge and prosecute those individuals who are involved in this. So I just hope that we see this slow down. And again, I think our messaging is going to have some impact, and we'll continue to message to make sure that people understand the serious nature of what's happening in our community, and our young people understand that first and foremost.
There are so many resources that were diverted to these bomb threats. There are emergency vehicles going with sirens, going at speed to get to these locations. There is the chance for an injury of a first responder. There's a chance of an innocent bystander to be involved in emergency response. There's a cost to this, as a lot of people are taken off of the roles that they're supposed to be doing and sent to these locations. So, you know, and I know as a 12-year-old, who would have been, you wouldn't have been thinking about, you know, oh, I'm doing something, you know, what about the police car speeding along and potentially having an accident? That's not in your frame of reference.
Right.
So it's making sure that young people know what the implications are of their actions. Their families know what are the implications of their actions, so that these things don't happen, because this is a horrible thing to do to the community, especially during these crazy, anxious times abroad.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Chief Jones, for coming on and answering questions. It's been great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Yep.
And thank you to the media. Thank you so very much.
We have a few little other things to go over. First, you know, when we're talking about juvenile justice and some of the issues that were just talked about, you know, juvenile justice issues impact only a small number of youth overall. But social media impacts almost every young person in our community. Obviously, it's been tagged as a reason for some of the mental health difficulties young people are having, which is why the Maryland Attorney General recently sued the social media companies for the algorithms that they use, the addictive implications that they provide. The county attorney has sued, the Montgomery County attorney has sued many of these companies as well, because of the impact that it's having on our young people, our young people's lives and mental health, which is why the county executive is proud to have sent over a request to the county council from the school system to allocate $3 million for an anti-cyberbullying campaign. We received a state grant for this effort, and we look forward to working with the county council to make sure that this money is appropriated so that the school system can take additional action to deal with some of the implications of cyberbullying, hate, online hate, and its impact on mental health amongst our young people, seen particularly in the school system. With that, we're going to pivot to the health report. COVID, of course, is still with us as we enter the winter months. Remember, over the last several winters, we have seen an uptick in cases. Hopefully, we will see no waves like we've seen before. But winter months mean winter holidays, which means traveling around Thanksgiving and around all the December into January holidays, which is why it is so critically important to get vaccinated. Vaccinated for the flu, vaccinated for COVID, vaccinated for RSV. Those vaccines are all readily available at places around the county. But we just want to stress, especially here we are at the very beginning of November. Thanksgiving is only a little more than 3 weeks away. We need to make sure people are vaccinated while they travel, because you're going to be seeing going to be seeing older relatives potentially. You're going to be going to different parts of the country with different vaccine rates. So please take a moment to get vaccinated while you can before you do any traveling. But in fact, even if you're not traveling, get vaccinated. It's so important it may not in the end keep you from getting COVID, RSV, or the flu. But I can tell you from my own experience with COVID, having had that shot made sure I had a case that was far less difficult than it otherwise would have been, because whether it's the flu shot, you might still get the flu, but you get a far milder case. So please get vaccinated. With that, we've got Dr. Davis on the line, and we've got Sean O'Donnell on the line to give us a quick update about where we are with our COVID numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Madaleno. I will share with you a few of our charts as we do each week. Going into it, across the United States, there are a couple of again, these are all parts of the Omicron variants, but EG5, HV1 continue to make up more and more of the cases. And this may be what's spurring the latest continuation of the wave. When I say continuation, what we've seen across the state, which is on the left, and what we've seen in Montgomery County, which I've circled on the right, is after coming down for a few weeks, we've seen our test positivity begin to go back up a little bit. We've seen our transmissions, so these are PCR tests independent of hospital visits. We've seen the case rate go up a little bit in our county. We're starting to see that in other places as well. And you can see it a little bit more clearly here on the chart on the left. You see after coming down for a few weeks, we're starting to go up a little bit. Now, when we talk about people who actually become sick enough to go to a hospital, to an emergency department, or an outpatient center, these are discharge diagnoses from all the patients that go to emergency departments. This is the percentage. Well, across the top is the numbers of patients we're seeing. And you can see that after, again, going up and then coming down, we have a little bit of blip at all the different age groups of increased number of emergency department visits. Our seniors have maintained kind of a higher rate for the past few weeks. Looking at other diagnoses at the bottom, you see for influenza, it's just, we're starting to see just a little bit of activity of people going to the emergency departments. And then for RSV, again, these scales are a little bit different if you look at the left-hand side, but we're actually starting to see some of those RSV visits to emergency departments, largely, again, younger people, although the seriousness of illness is mostly for our seniors, and that's who's recommended to get that RSV vaccine, our seniors. When we look at more serious illness, hospitalizations, we've held a little bit steady over the last week in Montgomery County, but these are still elevated levels compared to earlier in the year. They're reduced compared to previous waves, but elevated compared to the non-COVID waves. And when we look across the state, we saw that those numbers had gone up last week. They came down just a little bit this week. But again, we're still seeing transmissions and hospitalizations across Maryland. Looking at our mortality data, deaths with a COVID diagnosis, you see October has already been more deadly than most of the other months this year, at least since we came out of last year's wave. And so this is, again, underscoring that, unfortunately, we're still seeing deaths from COVID at a higher rate than most other respiratory diseases, and that's why we're encouraging these vaccinations. One second while I unhide one of our data slides that I wanted to share with you. When we look across the U.S., you can see it's not just Maryland, but we're seeing emergency department visits for RSV. And again, just the beginning of emergency department visits for influenza. We expect to see more of that as we go forward. I'm just going to back up a little bit here. I just wanted to share with you where we are with our influenza vaccinations in Montgomery County. Almost about 19% of our county has gotten their flu vaccinations. Again, we know a lot of people will wait until they have their annual visit with their doctor, but we'd encourage people to go and get that flu vaccination before the holidays happens. With the COVID vaccinations, for the county, we're about half of this number, and some of that has to do with the later starting point of the availability of the booster vaccine this year for COVID. But we also know that it's been more challenging for people to get that shot, and many times having to go to a specific location because their insurance requires them to go to one type of pharmacy versus another. Again, we encourage people, get those shots now before you go to visit your parents or grandparents for the upcoming holidays. That will help reduce your risk. You may want to help those seniors to get the shots. We are seeing our seniors come out and get their COVID vaccinations at higher rates, but it's still far below where we were in previous years. So again, we're encouraging that level of protection.
Hey, Sean, as someone who's got a lot of gray hair, how do you define a senior?
Well, we know that people who are at risk for serious effects of COVID tend to be those who are over 50, particularly if you're over 65. Those are where we're seeing most of our death data are individuals who are over 65. But if you're even younger than that and you have underlying health conditions, you are at greater risk for serious illness. So we're encouraging everyone to get that booster shot. But where we see most of that serious illness is with those who are 50 and older or have underlying conditions. Very, very important for those individuals to get the booster shot this year to protect themselves. And again,
all right.
We have our resources, no changes to that. Lots of opportunities to get rapid test kits or to go for testing and treatment at pharmacies or to get vaccinated across the county. At this point, those are the updates on our respiratory diseases. Dr. Davis, did you have any other comments you'd like to add at this time?
Nothing additional other than to continue to echo that now's the time to get your vaccine. This is a great time, this first week of November, going into Thanksgiving and all of the winter holidays, Diwali, Christmas, Hanukkah, all of that's coming up. So get it now. It's not just for your own protection, but if we want to prevent seeing a wave, the best way to prevent seeing a wave is to have more people vaccinated.
Thank you, Dr. Davis and Mr. O'Donnell. Members of the media, any questions regarding the public health update or any other topics for county officials at this moment? Please raise your hand. Any more questions? No more questions? Well, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. CAO Madaleno, for joining us in the absence of the county executive. And you have a great afternoon, everyone. Stay safe. We'll see you again.
Remember, changing clocks, fall back means put your new batteries in your smoke alarms. Check your smoke alarms, check your CO2 alarms. Now's the perfect time to do it. In addition to getting vaccines, you could go to a store, get your batteries and your vaccine all at the same time. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.